Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on what B2B leaders must do for true digital transformation. I'm Julia King, a business and technology journalist, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. And now about today's topic. Today, almost every company is a tech company of sorts. Can you imagine a bank, perhaps, without a mobile app, or a large retailer without an e-commerce site? Such capabilities are now really commonplace, part of the digital transformation that companies have been going through for the past several years. Yet, compared to banks, retailers, and other consumer-oriented or B2C companies, businesses whose customers are other businesses, the B2B sector, have yet to reach their full digital potential. Many still have a long way to go to achieve true digital transformation. The question is why? Why do these companies lag behind their B2C counterparts? And how are they working to overcome their toughest challenges? What do they need to do in order to move from operational complexity to operational simplicity? And how can B2B executives determine where they are today and where they should go next in order to become more digitally transformed and where they should next go on their digital transformation journey? These are among the key issues we'll be presenting and talking about today during our webinar. I'd like to introduce you to our presenters, J.B. Wood, who is President and CEO of the Technology and Services Industry Association, and Thomas Lah, Executive Director of the Technology and Services Industry Association. Together, J.B. and Thomas are co-authors of Digital Hesitation, why B2B companies aren't reaching their true digital potential. Just a little bit about TSIA. TSIA is an industry research organization which works with hundreds of leading public companies in the hardware and software sector, as well as across healthcare, industrial, and the professional services markets. These member companies agreed to provide data to TSIA about their businesses, their business practices, and their operating results. TSIA in turn analyzes this data to determine which business practices work best in the real world. So we have a wealth of experience here, and you have a lot that you can learn from these folks. So let me turn it right over to you, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Julia, and welcome everybody. So I'm going to kick off here. Before we start talking about digital hesitation, why companies are hesitating, we want to talk about the potential. And I also want to make sure that, JB, can you see my screen or my slides? Okay, all right, just double checking, folks. So here is the potential, and this is something that we've been writing about for years, and that is that there are technology companies that historically have been very focused on the product capabilities, the technical capabilities they have within those products. And more, you have customers that are really fixated on the business outcomes they can get from that technology. And there's been a lot of talk over the past several years around this concept of digital transformation. And that term is used very broadly, very loosely. People have different interpretations. And a couple of years ago, we wrote a paper really defining our view of what is digital transformation, what's really going on there. And what you see is that there are two value vectors that companies pursue when they go on a journey of digital transformation. The first value vector is really just wringing out some of the operational complexity. You have these large data centers, you're managing all this technology yourself, and you're saying, hey, maybe I can move some of this to the cloud, move it into a managed offer as I become more digital, and there's clearly value in that. And there's a second value vector, though, that is really exciting, and that is once companies get in this more digital posture, they can do things they've never done before, and we'll talk about that. And this is just a visual way to think about this, right? The first value vector, I'm moving stuff from on-prem up to the cloud. The second value vector, I am now, unlocking new ways to do business. And JP, I thought we'd do a poll here and just kind of see where the audience is on this journey. And the first question is around, how much of your technology infrastructure has been migrated to the cloud? How far are you on this journey? And for the folks attending might know exactly for sure, but you can, I'm sure, take a guess here about where your company is. JB, for us, I don't think there's anything we're running from an infrastructure perspective that's not in the cloud. I think everything's out there, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I'm expecting, most companies, most respondents to be citing a healthy percentage of all of their work being done in the cloud, not probably 100%, but pretty solid amount. And we see this becoming more and more and more ubiquitous all the time. So this is sort of the easy first step, if you will, even though it doesn't feel easy, but it is the easy first step.
Exactly. So can we take a look at the results? Can we see what people are coming in here?
Yeah.
I guess I have to.
So we have about 40% saying 25%, 25% saying about 50%, and then about 20% saying about 75%. So, in general, I would say, most people are reporting that they're 50% or more migrated to the cloud in terms of their infrastructure.
Yeah, so well on their journey here. Okay, so let me bring my slides back up here. So the other question then that we have on this is, are there people attending the webinar today that have your own technology offers out there, and where are you in moving those to the cloud? So maybe you used to provide technology, it could have been on-prem software, it could have been a piece of hardware that was on-prem, but now you've migrated that to a cloud solution. Kind of curious where the audience is on this one as well. For your own taking care of your own house here in terms of getting.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a little harder because this actually involves, obviously if you're a SaaS company, you're born in the cloud, and your offers by definition are 100% cloud-based. But there are many B2B companies who have been around for a long time, either like traditional software companies or hardware companies, who had a big migration, right? And that's a heavier lift than being obviously born in the cloud. And so it's going to be interesting to see how much of the audience feels that they have really integrated cloud capability into their, I'm going to say, products and services.
Yeah, and we do a lot of research in this area, and a couple comments I can make in terms of what we see generally. If you look at traditional software enterprise companies, a lot of them are well on this journey of becoming more, SaaSified, and we see in some slides we did at the beginning of this year that a lot of these legacy companies now have over half of their revenue coming from, new SaaS offerings, not legacy on-prem. For on-prem hardware companies, it's a different story, as you know, JB. It's a harder lift. To get into a more digital posture with customers, and so there's still a lot of work to be done there. So let's take a look at the results, JB. Since my screen's hidden from that, what do you see?
Actually, not that different than the first set of results, right? Okay. So 37% are saying that they have about 25% of their offers have embraced cloud-based technology in all or in part. About 22% say that about half the portfolio is cloud enabled, and then 12% 75, and 11% are, which I presume are the born in the cloud B2B companies on the call, are at 100%.
Yeah.
And 18%, interestingly, 18% still at none.
Yeah. Well, and we do know there's a lot of traditional companies out there that have not started this journey. So, but it's good. So we understand where the audience is, which is perfect. But let's click into this second value vector, which we think is really where there's a lot of there. And once you are in a more digital posture for your own business with your customers are more connected, you are now getting telemetry that you never had before as a company. And you can do really awesome and wonderful things with that telemetry. And JB, I remember when we were working on the book Consumption Economics, you came up with this phrase about the data that was piling up in the corner or on the floor. What did you mean by that when you made that observation?
Well, it's funny because if you look at this construct that we just laid out, which is to say, hey, look, for a lot of B2B companies, the first thought when they thought about digital transformation is, okay, let's migrate our IT workload out of our data centers into the cloud. Then the second thought is, okay, we've got to, sort of SaaSify the product line to whatever degree that we can. And, both of those journeys, one of the major benefits of those journeys is the data that you begin to accumulate, right? And especially on the second step of SaaSifying your portfolio, because now all of a sudden you're connected to those products that you never used to be connected to. And you begin to get all forms of input, right? You begin to get data on things like uptime. You begin to get data on things like utilization. You begin to get data on things like performance, right? And so the data starts streaming in. And then the question is, what are you doing with that data? Right. And, literally the analogy of it's like when you have too much of something in your house, you take it out and throw it in the corner of the garage, and it just starts to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And you say, someday I'm going to go do something with that data. And unfortunately, too many B2B companies have not really sat back and said, what is the value of that data? What kind of a business could we be if we took that data and we purposed it toward changing both the customer experience and the employee experience? And Thomas, you've said several times, and I think you're absolutely dead on, that for a lot of large and older companies, they thought those first two activities, right? Meaning, move my IT workloads to the cloud and SaaSify my products, that was the definition of digital transformation. Right. And we're saying, actually, those were the easy things. That was the easy part, right? Yeah. And the true value is about what has to come next. And I'm fond of saying that this juncture is where you say, look, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about redefining the value that we can deliver, right? Creating a SaaS experience and do these things in the portfolio. Now it's time to think about redefining the way we deliver that value, right? How do the customers come to consume that value, to interact with the company? How do the employees interact with the customer in a digital way? And so this whole second value vector around taking that data and really going to the full potential of becoming a digitally transformed business, now the hard work really begins.
Absolutely. And just to give the audience, a sense of the type of value we're talking about here, and this is something we've been studying for several years, and this is really where as a technology solution provider, you can climb this value ladder. It's no longer about just providing great technology with great technical capabilities. You can really start to influence the way your customers doing business, help them get their business outcomes. We look at when new solutions come up, we look at for attributes that we call the killer, the compelling as a service attributes, and these are things, again, you probably couldn't do before. Maybe you can now do consumption-based pricing. Maybe you can now have line of sight to adoption, and you can actually help your customers, adopt. You can help your customers with specific KPIs. And so, like you're saying, JB, the easy part was saying, look, I SaaSified my technology, but now how do I unlock these types of value propositions? And to give a sense of how this is unfolding out in the wild, I'll just give you 3 simple examples. Here's BASF. They now have a solution where a farmer has a unit where they put soil in. Information about that soil is taken up to the cloud. BASF runs AI on that. They look at weather, they look at all these conditions, and they come back with a very specific prescription for that farmer to maximize yield, right? That's something they couldn't do before. Philips Healthcare, a member of TSIA, has now all their monitoring devices. They can connect them and run those as a managed offer. So they can actually help hospitals with staff productivity in a way that they could have never done when this stuff was disconnected. And then just one more simple example that I love to use, because Michelin has taken the lowly rubber tire, the lowly rubber tire, and when it's disconnected, there's only so much you can do, but now it's connected, they have sensors, they have telemetry, and they actually can do fleet management. They can go up to large trucking companies and help them with optimizing their fuel, help them optimize uptime. So that's just giving the audience a taste of the potential that is there with the complete digital transformation. But, and the reason we wrote this book and the title it has is, this is the hard part, as you alluded to. And, the first one I just want to put on the table, JB, is this business model transformation that we've been watching companies, work to navigate. And, the moves you have to make on the chessboard here, and we talked about this in the book and the chapter, is, the classic innovator's dilemma, which I'm sure many people on this webinar are familiar with, Clayton Christensen's work here, is, I provided technology, and now that technology is changing in the marketplace, and I'm kind of married to the old version. So I have tape backup. That's what I make, and now EMC comes along with these disk array. Like, what do I do there? Do I really want to go into the new technology? That's the classic innovator's dilemma. But this move that we're studying now is the business models. As companies become more digital, you also move from typically a transactionally oriented business model to one that is much more about recurring revenues. So it upends your entire financial model as well. And what we see is people are trying to stand on these new business models that are not only high growth, which we've seen a lot of high growth SaaS companies, but ultimately, and especially if you're a legacy company, you've been around for a while, you can't really look at your investors and say, hey, I'm growing 30-40%, but oh, by the way, I don't make any money. That's not going to be okay. Companies ultimately have to sit down on a chair that is high growth and high profits. And boy, JB, we've been watching the news. That song is being played now, even for these born in the cloud companies. People are asking this question of how can you get up to that high right, not just high growth, but bring both things to bear, profitability as well.
Yeah, I mean, for years, when capital was widely available, the venture capital and the private equity community were really saying to their portfolio companies, just grow, just grow. And that was, in many respects, an unfair competitive advantage over a traditional public company that had a lot of value investors, or maybe even large family-controlled businesses, where there was a familiarity with a profitable model.
Right.
And so you had these sort of two classes of citizens in the markets. You had the just grow and don't worry about profits, and there were shareholders who were rewarding that model. And then there were these companies who couldn't pivot to that model because they sort of had their profitable past as a boat anchor.
Yeah.
But all the while, we've been saying that is not a permanent. Just grow with no profits is not a sustainable position. And
Right.
Obviously, in the last 6 months, the markets in general have come to this conclusion. So now everybody is trying to figure out, how do I get to this high growth, high profit model? And again, I want to just put an exclamation point on what we've said so far, which is, if sort of wave one was moving your IT into the cloud, wave two is about SaaSifying your products. And as a part of that, you have this step of saying, okay, now that I'm connected to my products and connected therefore to my customers' use of my product, how can I move up the value chain, right? How can I no longer just focused on, do I have great features and functions, but am I actually delivering business results for customers? Am I actually delivering financial results? Am I actually improving their key KPIs? So even after I'm done SaaSifying my product, then you've got to say, how do I take the data in the corner, right, and build up that value chain to these new levels of value? And that creates higher growth.
Yep.
But even that is not the end, right? Because if you are still an incredibly labor-based business model, you're not going to get into this high growth, high profit, right? You're going to be stuck. People are going to love the new value you're creating for them, but you're not going to like the cost model that goes along with it. And so that is the other part of this that we're going to tackle.
Yeah, we are, and as you and I know, I mean, a lot of these born in the cloud companies have been, they've had high growth, but a lot of that growth is on the back of just labor-intensive models, labor-intensive
whether
sales
it's sales
models
or services or whatever, super labor-intensive.
But the good news for folks here on the phone is that there are more and more case studies of companies that are getting through this business model transformation. Adobe is classic. Everyone's heard the Adobe story. People are probably sick about hearing about it, but I can tell you that right now, Adobe's business model is more profitable, right, when they're in this cloud posture than they were when they were, on, slinging CDs. Microsoft is a fantastic case study. You can look at that, their financial evolution there. The majority of the revenue now coming from the new types of offers, and they've done a good job of staying, very profitable. Palo Alto Networks, here's a classic on-prem hardware company. That's what they were several years ago. 0% of revenue coming from any recurring subscription. Now have about half of the revenue coming from that. High growth. They're working on the profitability side, but they've proven that you can move that business model. So there's good examples out there. And I'm just, curious to see again where our audience is on this. Is your company planning, or has it already undergone a business model transformation? This challenge that we're talking about, moving from transactional to more recurring, changing the value propositions, as JB was talking about. Where are people on this one?
And I will also, add to what we said previously, which is, it's easy to sit around and say, well, we're not a Silicon Valley tech company, right? So this whole story doesn't really apply to me. And, I'm an industrial equipment company, or I am in, I'm a services-led company, or, whatever. But as you just pointed out, I mean, fertilizer as a service, right? Or tires as a service. And so, again, as Julia said in the beginning, every company's becoming a tech company. So you can't hide anymore, right? You can't say this transformation is not coming to my corner of the world. It absolutely is. Absolutely. And so, these stages of the evolution of digital transformation, are a skill set that literally every B2B company in the world has got to master. There's no get out of jail free card.
Yep, completely agree. So what are we seeing on the results there, sir?
So by a wide lead, transformation is underway, 53%. Yep. 9% no transformation is planned, and I am going to assert that that's not a sustainable position. Yeah. Only 5% say the transformation is complete, and then 15% saying we're planning to do so in the longer term, and 19% say planning to do something within 2 years. So, I mean, the vast majority would say underway, but incomplete.
Yeah, and that really aligns, again, with our motivation on doing this book and where we saw the industry, right? The fact that people are realizing they need to go on this journey, but it is not easy, and they're by no means, even if they said, hey, we've been working on, digital transformation for the past couple of years, they're not all the way through the knothole yet, right? It's not the full potential. And the second, so there's a business model transformation, which is tripping people up, but there's also sort of a DNA mentality that is tripping people up. And you put this on the table, I think 2 conferences ago in one of your keynotes, about this fact, and this is your slide, that we have got to make it a lot easier for our customers to do business with us. And so in this book, we take this head on around wringing complexity, out of the B2B relationship. And B2C companies have been very good at making it easier to do everything from banking to, booking your airline tickets and going after that complexity. B2B companies, not so much. What's your observation there?
Yeah, actually, if you can go back to the picture slide there, I really cannot stress how important this slide is. In a B2B world, especially if you're a large B2B company, I would submit to you that in management's effort to manage the business, right, to put command and control systems around the business, and to build these huge labor-based organizations, the global sales team, the global services team, the global finance team, all of these huge organizations and all of this operational complexity that your customers had to navigate to get to the value of your offers was incredible. You know, it's the picture on the left here, right? It is saying, I need to talk to 5 or 6 or 7 different people at your company in the sales process, and they're not talking to each other, and it takes us weeks and months to get prices out of you. And when I need services, I've got to go here and go there and call this and do all these kinds of things, instead of thinking about, on the right, what is the garden path that leads directly to our value. And so if you go to the next slide, we give you some examples of this, right? So in a complex B2B mentality, you know, in the traditional world, we sold, you know, high price, big upfront commitment contracts. We had thousands of SKUs in our portfolios with complex configurations that had to be, you know, custom, and you know, where our solution engineers had to wade through all that, you know, those thousands of SKUs. We were labor-based in every kind of customer interaction. Took a long time for customers to get to value. And our business was really driven by a combination of our product development engineering teams and the sales teams. And the customer relied on the sales team to help negotiate the complexity of the business. That is not a digitally enabled, I mean, that has zero chance of being digitized. And so, you know, so many B2B companies have said, and this is the nature of digital hesitation, we're just too complex. Right. You know, those consumer companies, they can do this. Yeah, they can do it because they have simple products, or it's simple to sell or simple to price. We can't do it. And I'm telling you, that conclusion, that is digital hesitation. And that is the day at which that company's future is at serious risk, because somebody else is going to come along, either a new company who is attuned to this from the beginning and who says, I'm going to start this company with a focus on the customer experience and simplifying the path to value, or a competitor of yours who is going to take this head on and say, look, I have got to move to a high volume, you know, little land and big expand ARR model. I'm going to focus on a digital customer experience, rapid time to value. So we would submit that the number one, again, you've moved your workloads to the cloud, you have SaaSified your offers, you have moved up the value ladder, and you're able to now be more proactive in driving the business outcomes. Now what comes next is this digital B2B customer experience, and you're not going to make that happen if you don't attack this accumulated complexity that you have built up over decades and decades as your company has become a global, you know, a global force in its market. You've got to attack the holy grail, which is these large, complex, labor-based sales and services functions that you have, and I'm going to use the word intentionally, you've accumulated piece by piece over the years.
Yeah, and for the listeners here who are like, you know, yeah, but again, you guys don't know our industry and the complexity, and you know, we just don't see this as being imperative. And I will guarantee you that if you talk to executives from HP and IBM and Dell, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and you said, do you think you're going to have a competitor that basically, you know, people can get storage and computing power by clicking buttons off of a website, i.e. AWS, they would have said, no way. It's way too complex. That is enterprise IT now through a, you know, clicking buttons on a web browser. So this story is definitely coming to your marketplace. And so, you know, curious here, this next poll, how active is your company trying to take out complexity and simplify things? Where do you feel your company is on this journey? This is going to be an interesting one, JB, to kind of see.
Yeah, I mean, this is in many respects, the question is, are you willing to take on the sacred cows of the organization? You know, are you really ready to say, do we need all these salespeople? Do we need all these services people? Do we need all these SKUs? You know, or can we start with a customer experience that we want to build and we want to digitally create, and then begin to figure out how to link that to a more minimal state of command and control systems, more bundles, more self-service, more try before you buy kinds of activities. And again, this is a hard journey because some of these organizations are super powerful. And as you start saying, I want to simplify the sales process, and that may mean we need fewer salespeople, you're going to get a lot of pushback, right? But from a customer perspective, it is absolutely the right thing to be doing.
Yeah. So what are they? How folks weigh in here?
Well, it's interesting and encouraging. I would say 25% say very active, it's a top priority. And again, I would submit you're not going to create a digital customer experience in B2B if you don't make simplifying the operational complexity of your business a top priority. So 25% are on that square. The majority, well, 43% say they're somewhat active. 19% say less active, it's on our radar, but not really. 8% not at all. So I mean, I would say there's some recognition of this. I think one of our objectives today is to really shine a bright light, because this is not, I'm not talking about 3-month projects. This is, you accumulated this complexity over decades.
Right.
And if you say, I cannot digitize the customer or in fact the employee experience, I can't do that effectively until I have simplified all of this accumulated complexity, then that means that you really can't begin this digital customer journey until that complexity is ironed out. And that's going to take years to do. And so if you're not very active today in this operational simplification process before you can digitize, we would submit to you, this has to become a board level conversation, because you are going to be so vulnerable to other companies who do have a better digital customer experience. And literally when you say, okay, now it's time for us to get active in the simplification process, you could be talking 3 to 5 years before you've simplified enough that you can digitize it.
Yeah, and again, when we're in conversations and people ask this question, well, how long do you think this type of transformation takes? And they want to think in quarters. And we say, well, you've got to think in years. You've got to think in years. And, we wrote this book, number one, to make the case for companies to really lean into the full, complete thought of our view of digital transformation. We also wrote the book to put success tactics, on the table for companies to start the journey. And, there was a very simple thought we had early on. We're writing this book, and that we really encourage companies to internalize. And that is, if you now do have data you never had before, this telemetry, what can you do with it? What new value propositions can you unlock? What things can you stop doing? To your point, simplify your operations. And in the book, we break it down into this game board here. And this is an iterative process. You're applying this to your sales motions, your product development motions, your service motions, and you're saying, hey, I now have telemetry I never had before. That's fantastic. What are the new tools I can put this into, right? And we see a lot of companies now really investing in customer analytics, centralizing that, new platforms, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to take the data with these new tools, and I am going to blow up in a good way a lot of my workflows here. And as you said, not just customer facing, but also internally. And ultimately, the end game is you are creating a better experience, not just for your customer, but for your employees, for your partners, for all your stakeholders here. There is a lot of upside by leaning into this journey. And again, it's iterative, it's a rinse and repeat, going after this again and again and again. And there's one area particularly that we want to kind of click into as the example, and that is around working with customers, the sales process. This is the TSI layer model for those of you not familiar. You land customers, but the game now is not just landing them, but do they adopt and use your solution so that you can expand and renew those customers. And in the book, we talk about A players. So JB, can you just kind of walk us through the upgrade we did here in the book?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people who've already begun to move to a recurring revenue model, you may say, okay, look, we have a light bulb that's gone off, and we understand that if you don't get adoption, you don't get expansion and renewal. And so we have stood up a customer success organization as an example, or we have pivoted some of our service resources to be more focused on driving, customer adoption of our technology. But how do we automate the land process, right? We're still spending 25 or 28 or 30 or 32% of revenue on this gigantic global sales force. And, it's still, sales is still considered an art form, right? Or even worse, sales is still considered a brute force tactic, right? You got to make this many cold calls. You got to go, find these opportunities in the market and wrestle them to the ground. And what we're learning is that again, the data piled up in the corner, if we look at our existing customers, we can learn so much about who the right customers are for our business or for each individual offer. And what was happening and again, I'm talking about my existing customers, by studying them. What happened in their business that made them decide it was time to buy our solution? What happened in the first 6 months of their experience with us that made them great consumers of our technology? Who was involved in the decision-making process? What were their internal, practices? And we can figure out what right looks like. And then we can say, we're not going to just have sales brute force its way into the market. We're going to be able to look at data from our existing customers and model out who the ideal customer is, look at public data about prospective companies, and we're going to be able to all of a sudden place sales resources at the right account with the right offer, talking about the right business outcomes at the right time with the right buyer and potentially the right partner. And we're going to be able to dramatically reduce our sales costs, because we are using data, with this new data, I no longer have to do as much cold calling, right? And with this new data, I no longer have to respond to RFPs that I kind of know I'm going to lose in the beginning, right? So it's a great example of how we can take the data from the existing customers and we can use it to dramatically improve something as, traditionally brute force as sales. And again, we're seeing this happen in the industry today.
Absolutely. And in times of recession, people start to get very fixated on where's my growth going to come from. And again, if you're pulling the old levers, lots of salespeople, just refreshing your product, et cetera, our argument here in this book is those are not going to be the winning levers here. And this digital transformation journey, if you really, again, pursue it to the end, unlocks things like product-led growth, channel-led growth. You're building platforms that are, you have channel partners that can build value on top of. You've got experience-led growth. In other words, you are creating a lower friction experience for the customer. Customer-led growth is what you were just on, JB, which is I understand my customer better than ever, and so I can accelerate, growing those customers. And as we've already talked about, outcome-led growth, I can actually commit to specific business outcomes. So these are the future growth levers. And in this book, we really, again, click into how you unlock those growth levers. So we have a chapter on products that climb the value ladder, digitally enabling partners, DCX, the digital customer experience, and customer success at scale. As you mentioned, a lot of companies have established it, a little bit of a financial art project for folks that haven't taken it to scale. We have data-driven sales, as you were just talking about. We also talk about outcome-aligned pricing. So really clicking into all of these, because these are, again, the future levers of growth, and what we were on earlier, growth with profitability. That is going to be the new mantra. And again, if you just look at what's going to happen with the NASDAQ so far this year, it's been brutal. And every day I'm reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about profitability being key for these, for these companies now in a way that has never been true before. So
yeah, growth versus profits shouldn't be a decision.
Right? Should not be. And again, we don't think it has to be a decision. That's the whole point of this book is that there are levers you can be pulling that absolutely can get you through this business model transformation and get you on the trajectory of both growth and profitability. And so with that, this is probably a good place to make sure we have time for Q&A. And I think Julia's gonna help us with that transition.
Do you want to mention the podcast series?
Oh yeah, just real quick, for those of you not familiar with TSIA, we've got a great podcast series, Tectonic, that we've been doing now for not quite a year, becoming very popular. It's 40-minute episodes. I host it, and so I encourage you to take advantage of that. And because a lot of these themes that are in the book here, we talk about in that series.
Well, we'll move to Q&A. Thomas and JB, thank you. Lots and lots of great information there. And I'm going to dive right into the questions. We heard a lot about simplification, infrastructure simplification, process simplification. Fabio asks, what's a good example of a B2B company that is differentiated by reducing complexity?
Well, Thomas mentioned AWS, right? I mean, and AWS was sort of the warning signal, I would say, to the B2B world, right? And because again, you can do business with AWS, you can, move workloads to the cloud, you can spin up instances and take down instances, and you can enjoy the value of AWS from an IT perspective and never talk to a human being, never once, right? No salesperson, no service person, and so, and again, to Thomas's point, because we've been working with these companies for 20 years now, a lot of the large traditional IT companies said that day would never come, right? And you look at the market share gains of AWS and Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud and what they have done in such a short period of time by reducing operational complexity and allowing customers to get directly to the value, that is the calling card, and that is happening in industry after industry after industry.
Yeah, and just to put an exclamation point on that, and I've done this, right? You can go to AWS's website, and in 3 clicks, you can start using one of their services. Go to a traditional IT provider, I won't mention names, go to their website and try to do anything in 3 clicks. You can't get there. So there is quite the contrast, and again, we believe every market is going to be facing that same type of contrast, and customers want simplicity. As Bill McDermott told you, CEO of ServiceNow told you in an interview, JB, simplicity is a compliment to the customer, and that's what they're going to gravitate.
Okay, let's move to Sonia's question. You mentioned dealing with AWS and never having to deal with a human being, and here's an interesting flip on that question. On that observation, what are your thoughts around the human aspect and behaviors that are needed to break through the barriers around digital hesitation?
Yeah, so I'll take that on because I've worked on this with different member companies, and it's a great question. And by the way, we are not sitting here saying that everything is just going to go to AI and there's no labor involved, and that's the end game that everybody should be going to. That's actually not what we're saying. We believe that this journey on digital transformation allows your employees to climb up the value ladder, to get them out of the mundane, the repetitive, et cetera. And so there's a model we have on this, because members ask us, digital customer experience, what should we digitize? What should we not digitize? Right? And so there's sort of a 2x2 there. And if there is an activity you're doing, which is just all cost to you, and it doesn't have the potential to unlock economic value for you or the customer, you should be trying to digitize that. If there are activities, and I'll give you an example, companies like Google Cloud, et cetera, Microsoft, they have digital advisors, they have people that will work with customers, to help them, strategize. And again, it's an investment that these companies make because they know they can help grow those customers for themselves. So if there's an activity where you say, look, by having a person involved, I can amplify or accelerate economic opportunity, then you keep that labor in there, right? So you're being strategic about it. But what we're really emphasizing is you can't just shrug your shoulders and say, there's no place I can take out labor or complexity. It's all just too complex. That's the one.
I had a CEO of a large global company. We were talking about their sales function, and this person, I said, well, you've got about 14,000 salespeople, and he said, well, actually, JB, we have 5,000 salespeople and 9,000 people who watch them, right? And what he meant by that is we have so much complexity in the business. We need all these layers of management. We need sales operations. It goes on and on and on and on. And so the question is, from a standpoint of the human element of this, is where would you rather have the people in your business focused? Would you rather have them focused on increasing our ability to deliver value to customers, or managing the organizational complexity of our business that we have accumulated after years and years and years and years? And I think that's the fundamental shift. I think everybody would really rather be adding more value to customers in their day-to-day job rather than hurting the cats. And that's what I think is the opportunity for people in this transformation.
Thomas in the audience says, in my view, a business model transformation involves more than working on the two value sectors. In addition, we should consider a lot of context factors such as enterprise architecture and capability building. What are your thoughts here?
Oh yeah, we couldn't agree more. I mean, when we talk about this business model transformation, we've written multiple books and papers on this. I mean, there's multiple work streams, right, that are in play here, right? You're changing your customer engagement models, you're changing your infrastructure, your technical infrastructure, on and on, right? So it is a very broad-based endeavor, and there's something we call organizational capabilities, and we look at capability gaps. And one of the things that we do is you go into a company and you can assess that, and you can say, okay, here's the capabilities you need on the other side of this, right? Let's take a look at what you have. And there's usually a really significant gap there. And what we see is that executive teams and boards are underestimating, number one, how big the gap is, and number two, how much time and treasure it's going to take to get through that. Again, they want to think in quarters, and we know it's years.
Or the maturity of the capabilities they have. Again, customer success is a great example. You say, yeah, I got customer success. What you really have is eight people assigned to doing some tasks at your largest global customers, when in fact you should have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in customer success touching all your customer sectors and all geographies, and so they underestimate the maturity of the organizational capabilities they have. So Thomas in the audience is dead on right. This is about inventorying the capabilities you either have or don't have, figuring out which ones are not going to take you into the future, figure out which ones you don't have that you need in order to take you into the future, and begin the process of organizing those into an enterprise architecture, and beginning the journey of dismantling the old ones and building out the new ones.
Yeah, and I think just real quick, I think what Thomas is also chipping on there is the fact that companies do have this legacy infrastructure, and it is a significant overhaul. And that is sometimes companies just freeze right there and they go, man, our systems are so complex, we have so much technical debt, we just can't take these first couple of steps.
You can't rip out SAP.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
right.
so he's right. It does require complete architectural overhaul.
Farad asks, after you attain simplicity and reach your target, what are your thoughts about instituting a self-sustainability model?
Self-sustainability.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, I mean, sustainability in general, it's funny because when you think about sustainability from a business standpoint, there's so many ways you can measure that, right? I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot in the tech industry is about power consumption as an example, right? And as you move to a much more digitally enabled, if you're going to have fewer people and a more digital experience, the good news is you have fewer people on airplanes doing X, Y, or Z, but now you've got a much more compute intensive digital experience. And so I think sustainability as a thread in this journey is a relatively immature conversation, and I think one that the industry is starting to talk about, and we're hearing more and more and more. Thomas, wouldn't you agree? More and more and more about sustainability and self-sustainability you know, from a corporate standpoint than we've ever heard in previous years.
Yeah, in fact, I just recorded an episode of Tectonic on corporate sustainability. I had a guest, Cynthia Curtis, who I know from back in EMC days, and she is a corporate sustainability officer, a CSO at a company, actually a large commercial real estate company. And we had this very conversation, JB, right? And in that conversation, you know, I believe this, and it came out in the conversation, you know, this concept of digital transformation is absolutely intertwined with corporate sustainability, because digital transformation should be unlocking your ability. Like you said, I don't have to send all these people on a plane for this. I don't have to do this. There's things that we can stop doing that are very, you know, labor, energy intensive. So, but final comment there is I agree with you. It's still early days in that conversation. The companies, you know, are messaging they care about this and want to do things here, but there's no doubt it's still early days, in, you know, my perspective.
Here's a question from Eric, who says, what are your opinions on an API-led approach in terms of integrating services across the organization? Does that approach work for all organizations?
Well, JB, I'll comment on our own, you know, head of software development at our company, and I know that he is a big believer.
APIs and microservices.
Exactly, yeah. So what's your perspective?
Well, I mean, we are not and never profess to be technical experts, right? We are business model experts, right? We are really focused on, you know, what is the income statement of the future and how are you going to move from the income statement of the past to the income statement of the future, basically? And what does that mean to your portfolios and your offers and your go-to-market strategies and those kind of things? And so we sort of defer on the technical architectures of that to other people that are more qualified in that space. But I will though recall one thing that Thomas said, is that it is, you know, you have every large B2B company has these systems of record, right? They're ERP systems, they're CRM systems, they're these big monolithic systems that the business relies on to function every day. And if you say, well, we can't do any of this until we rip and replace all these systems of record, it's not going to happen, right? And so, you know, you have got to implement architectures that allow those systems of record to coexist and to begin to put, you know, some data from this system with some data from this system, from data with the system, and then have this layer of analytics capabilities and APIs and microservices and all those things that allowed us to take the data from those systems of record and create the digital and employee experience of the future. Because again, if you want to stop this thing in its tracks, then go to the board and say, we got to rip out our ERP and our CRM and this and that. Won't happen.
We have a couple of questions here that are dealing with that intersection of digital transformation and human factors, and I want to dig in there. Christopher asks, it's been clear that AWS, Azure, and so on have allowed people to do self-service, but many of the companies in the example have been investing heavily in traditional sales forces over the last few years as well. How do you find the right balance?
So, well, I'll take a crack at this one because that comment is absolutely correct. Right, and why is that happening? Because those companies with those services have climbed up and up and up the enterprise, you know, to larger and larger and more complex enterprises. Right, they are now providing. It's not just, you know, an SMB or small medium-sized company that's using AWS. It's very large, complex enterprises, and those tech companies are solving our natural inclination is, again, to solve that complexity with labor. So we need to bring in account executives. We need to bring in these people. We need to bring this, and for some of it, again, it makes sense. It's the right thing. But our argument in this book is not for all of it. And even for those companies, you know, we don't think that solving that complexity at the top end for an AWS, an Azure, a Google is going to be all through labor. That's not going to be the winning model.
All of those companies that you just mentioned are members of TSIA, and we are pushing, quite frankly, pushing back at them on some of those strategies. And I would tell you that fear of competition is the number one reason why they're doing it, right? So they worry that a big Fortune 500 company is going to make a platform or vendor decision that's going to shut them out. You know, if it's not them, it's going to be somebody else, and they're going to be shut out of that big company. And the competitor has got you know, sales teams on site, you know, multiple people in a sales team trying to get that battle. And I don't want to lose that relationship. I want to get in there and fight like hell. So yeah, I'm going to add salespeople that can go in and do that. We would submit that, you know, that while that may be the right thing for the short term, it is dragging a traditional model into a future where you should be, if you're going to build it up because of competition, you also have to have plans to whittle it back down, right? And otherwise you spiral right back into, you know, because that's the way things were always done, and that's the way our competitors are doing it. You know, we're just going to keep adding when the opportunity is maybe you got to do it in the short term because you haven't really digitized that complex corporate, you know, experience for your customers. But you got to have a plan to whittle it back down as you eat up that value chain of labor with your digital capabilities.
Yeah, and just to make that point, this is a true story conversation I was in with one of those three big cloud providers, and I won't say which one, but they said, the question to me was, they said, look, we've got these account executives we've hired to land these customers, and now they're landed, it's a consumption-based model, right? So now they're on the platform, and now they're working with customer success or digital advisors. What do you think we should do with these account executives? The JB's fund. I mean, this is a real question. We've got this big investment. We made this push to get the land, but now we've got this overhang of you know, account executive capability, and so that is a real problem, as JB said. I mean, one that we think is, you know, you got to solve. You can't carry the whole.
And the future of B2B business models is less customer commitment up front. In other words, a smaller land and more revenue across a longer term life cycle. Yeah. And so you're going to decrease the barrier, you're going to reduce the barrier for customers to begin to adopt you. And you're going to increase your capability of translating adoption into expansion and renewal. And so the sales onus is less on the front end and more in the life cycle. And in the life cycle, that expansion happens if you deliver value. So things like your customer success organization, other functions, your services teams, because they're the owners of the delivery of value along with your digital platform itself, they become more revenue generation oriented because of value equals consumption equals revenue. And you reduce the upfront requirement for the customers, and therefore you need fewer salespeople. And that trend of moving to recurring revenue, and you look at a company like Snowflake, which has been a very successful company, there's virtually no land, right? It is almost free to get started, and then every month Snowflake has the right to bill you for what you consumed. So the sales force at Snowflake is simply about finding new workloads to go ahead and get this model started inside a company and then let it run, right? The product and customer success, and let them grow the spending of the customer. And we're seeing that in hardware companies now, which, you know, you would have ever thought that you could put hardware on the customer site and not begin to monetize that hardware until the customer begins to consume. But that is actually happening today, and it's going to be happening more and more in the future.
All right, I'm going to jump in here with the last question and ask you both for your final tweet-sized answer to how can B2B companies make real progress on improving their digital customer experience?
Go ahead, JB.
My tweet answer is, if you don't start with the perspective of what the customer wants the experience to be, you'll never succeed.
My tweet answer: study the biggest friction points that exist right now. Start there.
Well done, gentlemen. Well, Thomas and JB, thank you so much. A lot of great information here, and thank you to our audience for such terrific questions. And just a reminder that we have recorded today's presentation, and that presentation will be available in just about 3 to 4 days. And thank you again. Have a great day.